Alright, let's walk through a few key developments from the last day that actually matter for preparedness, not doom scrolling. I'll keep it tight, regional where it matters, and always bring it back to what you can do. Event 1. China EU EV electronic vehicles trade deal signals shifting supply chains. China says it has reached a deal with the European Union on steps to resolve their dispute over electric vehicles imports. This is a part of a broader tensions around subsidies, tariffs, and industrial policy between China and Western economies. Region affected is direct China and the European Union, and indirect is North America and any region relying on global auto and supply chains. Why it matters for us? EVs aren't just cars, they are batteries, rare earth, chips, and grid integration. Trade disputes in this space hint at underlying tensions in critical minerals, manufacturing, and tech standards. Agreements can temporarily ease pressure, but they also signal that governments are willing to intervene heavily in strategic industries. For preppers, this is a reminder: transportation, batteries, and certain electronics are politically exposed supply chains. So prepping actions for Europe and China is Europe, diversify mobility, reduce dependency on any single car type, maintain at least one low-tech transport option, bicycle, fuel-efficient older vehicle, and battery priorities, stock critical rechargeable batteries for radios, tools, and lighting, while prices and availability are stable. So for China is plan for export-driven swings. If you work on export manufacturing, build 3 to 6 months of financial buffer where possible. Trade friction can hit jobs. And local backups. Maintain some local, non-digital transport options in case of policy or grid disruptions. Global implications for other regions are signal of future fragmentation. Even when disputes resolve, the pattern is clear. Governments see EVs and batteries as strategic assets. That often means more regulation, tariffs, and potential for sudden disruption. Knock-on impacts are tariff or policy changes can ripple into shipping, port congestion, and raw material prices, affecting everything from power tools to software components. So the forecast is, for short term, is likely public messaging about stability and cooperation, but under the surface, both sides continue building domestic capacity and backup partners. For medium term, 1 to 3 years, is expect more regionalization of manufacturing and more talk of resilience and French shoring. So prepper readies assume technology and battery-dependent gear will stay somewhat volatile in price and availability. If a piece of gear is central to your plan, don't waste years to acquire it. Event 2. Arctic geopolitics. So Greenland is in the spotlight. Event is Greenland is back in international headlines. Germany has pledged an increased role in Greenland, while US political figures continue to comment on its strategic value and defenses. The coverage reflects growing attention to Greenland's location, resources, and military relevance, especially among NATO members. So region affected is directly Greenland, Arctic region, Denmark, Germany, and United States. Indirect are NATO countries, Russia adjacent regions, and northern shipping routes. Why it matters for us? The Arctic is bellwether for both climate and great power competition. Greenland's position affects early warning radar, air and sea routes, and future shipping lanes as ice recedes. Growing political interest signals that Arctic militarization, resource extraction, and new trade routes are moving from theory to practice. For preparedness, that means potential shifts in global shipping patterns, fuel routes, and military posturing. Prepping actions for Arctic and North Atlantic adjacent regions are local communities in Greenland, Iceland, Northern Canada, Norway. So monitor infrastructure builds. Increased bases, ports, or mining activity can strain local resources, housing, prices, and services. Community-level resilience is strengthen is knowing that strengthen local food, fuel, and medical supply buffers as strategic attention grows and demand rises. For Northern Europe and North Atlantic is shipping risk awareness. Arctic roads opening can relieve some congestion but also create new choke points. If you rely on imported goods, track how many come via northern ports. Global implications for other regions is early warning indicator for heightened interest in Greenland usually correlates with broader shifts in NATO, Russia posture, and Arctic shipping viability. Energy and minerals are also should be taken into consideration. Increased competition for Arctic resources can influence global prices for certain minerals and fuels, affecting everything from heating costs to electronics. The forecast is for near term is more diplomatic visits, military exercises, and infrastructure talk rather than open conflict. But for long term, 5 to 10 plus years, as Arctic roads may become regular seasonal shipping corridors, changing where bottlenecks and vulnerabilities sit in global trade. So prepare this. This is in the early structural signals, not a tomorrow's crisis, but it supports long-term thesis. Global trade patterns are in flux. Keep your plans less dependent on just-in-time, long-distance supply chains. Event number 3 is Cuba-US tensions resurface. Cuba's president has publicly stated that there are no current talks with the United States after news reads and harsh rhetoric from current US President Donald Trump. The relationship remains strained, and any thaw appears distant for now. So region affected is directly Cuba and United States, especially Florida and Gulf region, and indirect is Caribbean and Latin America for migration and trade routes. Why it matters is Cuba sits on critical sea lanes and is source and transit point for migration flows into the US. When relations are tense, it can affect maritime enforcement, migration patterns, and energy-related logistics in the Caribbean. For preparedness, this matters because political friction in the region can stress border systems, coastal infrastructure, and even certain imports. So prepared actions for Cuba and nearby Caribbean is for Cuba general civilian context, local resilience over imports, prioritize food, medicine, and basic goods storage where possible. External economic pressure tends to hit availability first. And community support networks, strengthen local barter, mutual aid, and informal support. These become critical when formal systems are strained. US Gulf and Florida residents should dual risk prep, combine hurricane preparedness with migration and infrastructure stress planning, water, food, meds, and important documents ready for both natural and political disruptions, and situational awareness. Track credible local reporting on ports, coastal guard activity, and migration surges that can strain emergency services. Global implications for other regions are signal on US/Latin American relations. Persistent tension with Cuba often reflects or shapes broader US attitudes toward the region, which can affect trade, remittances, and political stability in nearby countries. And maritime security. Any serious deterioration could raise insurance and shipping costs in part of the Caribbean, with minor but real knock-on effects for fuel and goods. The forecast is, for short term, is rhetoric and symbolic moves are more likely than dynamic policy shifts, but in medium term, changes will likely follow broader US electoral dynamics rather than sudden breakthrough. So prepare red is threat Cuba-US tension as part of the background risk for the Caribbean basin. It's another nudge toward robust hurricane plus disruption perhaps if you're anywhere in that ecosystem. The event number 4 is bar fire in Switzerland highlights urban fire risk. So a Swiss court ordered 3 months of pre-trial detention for a bar manager after a fatal New Year's Eve fire in a bar, investigating focus on responsibility, safety measures, and potential negligence. The region is Switzerland, Western and Central Europe, but indirectly it affects any dense urban area with crowded indoor ventures. Why it matters for us is, while this is a localized tragedy, it's a sharp reminder of how fast indoor fires can become mass casualty events, especially when crowding, alcohol, and possibly insufficient exits of safety systems combine. For preparedness, everyday low-profile risks like fires, stampedes, and building code failures often pose more real personal risks than dramatic geopolitical stories. So preppers' actions for Europe and urban areas globally is personal fire safety audit. I mean, at home, check some smoke detectors, fire extinguishing, exit roads, and whether everyone in the household can get out in under a minute. And in public spaces, make it a habit when you enter a bar, club, or venue, quickly locate at least 2 exits and avoid being deep in a single narrow path. So micro EDC, everyday carry, should be considered carrying a tiny flashlight and keeping your phone charged. Smoke, darkness, and panic are what trap people. So, and social prep. If you are a calm one in your group, mentally rehearse how you'd say, "We are living now, this doesn't feel safe," so before this is a visible problem. Global implications for other regions are universal risk, fire code compliance and enforcement vary widely. If this incident triggers stricter enforcement in one place, it highlights that many other areas are still under-regulated. Prepper mindset shift should be accessed as well. It's a reminder to balance macro risks with everyday survivability. House fires, venue fires, and small disasters are where your skills and mindset are most likely to be tested. So forecast is for short term with legal proceedings and local debate over safety, inspections, and accountability. But prepper read is, this is a prompt, don't wait for regulators. Quietly raise your own standards for what counts as safe enough in the space you choose to be in. So today's events points to a few clear themes. Informational is now a contested space, AI-driven deepfakes, and so on. Strategic industries are politicized, from electronic vehicles to Arctic roads. Supply chains are becoming more regional and more fragile. Local, boring risks still dominate. Fires, infrastructure strain, and everyday hazards are where your preparedness will most likely pay off. So if you got value from this calm, practical breakdown, subscribe for more daily and weekly prep and briefs. In the comments, tell me which of these 5 areas do you feel least prepared for right now.